Hello, Libra, and welcome to Zodiac Whisper Tarot. Let me ask you something bold, straight from soul to soul. What if a spiritual meeting just ended and you were the center of it, without even knowing? What if the reason you've been feeling subtle shifts in your emotions, your dreams, your energy lately was because unseen forces were gathering in your name? Not to judge you, not to punish you, but to protect something powerful within you that others once tried to suppress. This video isn't just a reading. It's a divine message for Libra souls who have stayed silent too long. For those who kept the peace, even when it cost them their clarity. For the ones who believed their stillness meant they were invisible when in truth, you were being observed by the divine in complete reverence. A sacred meeting has taken place not in this material world, but beyond the veil. Your name was never spoken aloud, but your energy filled the room. And someone, yes, someone significant left that gathering in tears. Not because you were broken, but because they realized they could no longer bend the truth that lives inside you. Libra, you've always been the scale that others tried to tip. They called you too sensitive, too emotional, too quiet. But your silence has never been weakness, it has always been the language of wisdom. And now, the universe has chosen to speak on your behalf. You are not here by accident. There are no coincidences when it comes to divine timing. If you're watching this right now, it means something inside of you, something ancient and pure, is finally ready to be seen. Not just by others but by yourself. So before we dive into this transmission of cosmic truth, let me take a heartfelt moment to say thank you. Thank you for your presence. For every like, every comment you leave, every subscription and share. You are doing far more than supporting this channel. You are weaving yourself into the sacred tapestry of our soul family here at Zodiac Whisper Tarot. And truly it's your energy that fuels this space and allows us to bring through these transformative messages week after week. So thank you from the depth of my soul for being here. Now I want you to do something simple, yet deeply symbolic. Take a slow breath. Feel into your heart space. And when you're ready, drop an angel number in the comments below. Any number that has followed you, protected you, or echoed through your journey. That number will serve as a spiritual signature, affirming to the universe: I'm ready. I claim my light. Because, Libra, the revelations in this reading are not small. The truth about what was decided in that secret meeting is breathtaking. And yes, it will change how you view the recent shifts in your life, your relationships, and even your own inner dialogue. So stay with me until the end. Because what's coming is more than a message, it's a restoration of everything you were never meant to lose. And just as a gentle reminder from the higher realms, the soul who stands firm without needing applause is often the one God lifts first. Now tell me, dear Libra, what was it that pulled you here today? What quiet whisper or moment of synchronicity nudged you to click this video at this exact time? I see you. I feel your energy. And I'm honored to walk with you as we uncover what the universe has been orchestrating in your favor. All while you were simply being your radiant, balanced self. Let's begin. There's a quiet power that comes from recognizing how often you've tilted the scales in favor of others, not because you were weak, but because you cared. Libra, you are the embodiment of harmony and fairness, ruled by Venus, the planet of beauty, grace, and connection. But what happens when your natural desire for peace is mistaken for passivity? When your silence is misread as surrender, and your softness is treated like an open invitation for others to tip your balance? This is where the realignment begins, not through conflict, but through self-recognition. This part of your journey asks you to pause and look inward, not with judgment, but with compassion. For so long, you've chosen to keep the peace. You've held your tongue to avoid hurting others. You've absorbed tension, softened your edges, and adjusted your light to make room for theirs. And while this may have brought temporary comfort, over time, it created an imbalance so subtle you almost forgot it wasn't your true state. In the realm of tarot, the Justice card speaks not only of fairness in the external world, but of inner truth. It's the call to acknowledge what is out of order, not just around you, but within. Paired with the Hanged Man, there's a message here about perspective. You've seen things from every angle except your own. And with the Four of Swords, the energy of stillness reminds us that rest is not retreat, it is a sacred pause that allows recalibration. These cards collectively reveal a truth you may have sensed. The universe has noticed where the balance has been off, even when others haven't. And it's correcting that now. Astrologically, Venus blesses you with an incredible capacity to love, mediate, and beautify the world around you. But she also teaches one of the hardest lessons: how to love yourself enough to say, no more. Loving well doesn't mean sacrificing your boundaries. In fact, real love flourishes when rooted in mutual respect. And that respect begins when you respect your own emotional limits. There is no shame in stepping away from what drains you. There is no guilt in choosing your well-being over approval. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to stop enabling imbalances that exhaust your spirit. This isn't selfishness. It's wisdom. It's emotional maturity. And it's what restores the scales, not in anger, but in clarity. Think of this moment as a gentle return to your center. You were never meant to stretch yourself so thin to keep others comfortable. The divine does not ask you to dim your light for others to see theirs. In fact, quiet teachings remind us that your presence was never meant to be invisible, it was always meant to be felt. Not loudly, not forcefully, but unmistakably. Like gravity, like truth. This part of your journey is a sacred invitation to stop overextending, to stop overgiving, and to come back to yourself. You don't have to perform balance for the world. You are the balance. And when you honor that, when you stop letting others write your boundaries, you begin to feel the subtle but unmistakable shift of energy returning to you. So if you're feeling a quiet ache in your chest, a tiredness you can't explain, or a growing sense that something isn't fair, don't ignore it. That's not weakness speaking. That's your soul nudging you toward realignment. It's saying, you've given enough. Now it's time to give to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, this is what grace really looks like. Not the constant effort to please everyone, but the quiet, steady choice to honor your own truth without needing anyone else's permission. Let this be the beginning of that choice. There's a moment in every soul's journey when the truth no longer hides. And for you, Libra, that moment is arriving, not with noise but with clarity. The same light you've carried quietly for so long, often mistaken for fragility, is now becoming unmistakable to those who once underestimated it. There was summoning a presence, maybe a relationship, maybe a voice in your life that once made you question your own value. Someone who played with your emotions like they were pieces on a board, shifting just enough to keep you uncertain, always just out of balance. You see, not all manipulation is loud. Sometimes it comes wrapped in charm, in promises, in, "I didn't mean it that way." But your soul always knew. You just wanted to believe something better. You wanted to believe that if you just gave more, stayed calmer, stayed quieter, they'd finally see your worth. And yet, here we are. Something has shifted. Not because you forced it, but because truth always rises when it's time. There's an ancient wisdom that teaches this. You don't need to fight every injustice you feel. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is remain rooted in what's real, your integrity, your kindness, your balance. Because the more grounded you are in your truth, the more obvious the distortions around you become. And right now, that's exactly what's happening. The person who once tried to twist your perception of yourself is now being forced to sit with the consequences, not through confrontation, but through the slow unveiling of everything they tried to hide. Energy always returns to its source. What was projected onto you now circles back to its origin. And there's something strangely peaceful about knowing you didn't have to do anything to make that happen. This isn't about revenge. It's about release. You're not here to carry their shame, their avoidance, or their inability to honor you. They may not have spoken the apology you deserve, but the energy doesn't lie in deep inside. They know. They know what they lost when they mishandled your trust. And you? You no longer need to wait for validation. You've become it. The clarity in your energy is louder than anything they could ever say. If you've been seeing 222 or 888 lately, take it as a whisper from the universe. Harmony is returning. Cycles are completing. The peace you've been craving isn't just something to dream about, Anna Marie, it's something you're stepping into, because you've stopped resisting your own knowing. And when that happens, there's no need to win. You've already won something far more valuable, your self-respect. Remember, you're not being called to fix the imbalance that others created. You're being invited to rise above it. To no longer participate in patterns that dishonor your soul. And while that choice can feel lonely at first, what comes after is so much more fulfilling: quiet joy, deeper connection, and the kind of peace that doesn't depend on someone else's behavior. If you've ever found yourself silenced in a relationship, if you've ever felt like speaking your truth would cost you their approval, know this. You were never meant to shrink to keep someone else comfortable. And you certainly weren't created to carry the guilt of another person's fear. Some of the most powerful healing comes not from confrontation, but from reclaiming the space you once gave away. You don't need to explain to anyone why you walked away, why you stopped answering, why your energy shifted. Sometimes the most sacred response is silence, because silence speaks in ways noise never can. And in that stillness, something beautiful happens. People start to see the truth you were always embodying. Not because you forced it, but because they can no longer look away. Even in scripture, we're reminded that everything hidden will eventually be brought into the light, not to shame, but to heal. So let your healing be your response. Let your strength be soft but immovable. Let your growth speak so loudly that even those who dismissed you feel its echo. You were never meant to prove your worth to those who couldn't see it. You were meant to remember it for yourself and let the rest fall into place. Sometimes the hardest part isn't walking away, it's admitting to yourself that you've been staying in places out of duty, not peace. Libra, Your nature gravitates toward balance, toward resolution, toward creating harmony in spaces where others bring chaos. But there comes a time when your desire to keep the peace begins to cost you your own well-being. And that's not balance. That's quiet suffering. It's important to understand this shift not as weakness, but as wisdom. Because being a bridge is beautiful until you realize you're the only one standing in the middle, holding everything up while everyone else simply walks across. This chapter is not asking you to stop being kind. It's asking you to stop confusing self-sacrifice with service. You were not created to be the emotional landfill for people who refuse to take responsibility for their own healing. You're allowed to say no, even when it disappoints someone. You're allowed to rest, even when the world keeps spinning. You're allowed to choose your own clarity over someone else's comfort. And more than that, you're allowed to thrive without guilt. The human body is a messenger. When your nervous system is constantly bracing, when your breathing becomes shallow, when your sleep is disrupted not by stress you create but by the stress you absorb, it's not weakness. It's a signal. Grounding your body, especially in moments of emotional overload, can restore the internal rhythm that people-pleasing steals. Walking barefoot on the earth, breathing slowly with intention, or simply drinking a glass of water without distractions, all of these are powerful returns to the present moment. These small, sacred pauses tell your body, I am not here to carry what isn't mine. Movement can also become medicine. Gentle yoga, stretching while breathing deeply, allowing your spine and your shoulders to release the weight they've held in silence. This is a way of returning to yourself. This is how the scales recalibrate from within. Your emotional boundaries live in your physical body, and it's okay to listen when it says, enough. In the realm of energy, every time you absorb what doesn't belong to you, you create a silent contract with the world. I will keep taking, if you keep giving me chaos. And Libra, you've reached the point where that contract no longer serves your growth. The law of attraction responds not just to your words, but to your self-respect. When you begin to step back, when you stop overextending to keep others emotionally regulated, you don't just free your time, you free your destiny. New opportunities start to show up, not because they weren't available before, but because you've finally cleared space for them to land. There's a quiet lesson woven through all of this. Not everything broken is yours to fix. Not every conflict needs your mediation. And not every emotional storm needs your umbrella. You're not turning your back on love by choosing peace. You're honoring the kind of love that begins with you, and that's the kind of love that never demands that you suffer to deserve it. Remember, even in ancient teachings, we're reminded that giving to others should never mean abandoning yourself. You were not asked to carry the world. You were asked to carry light, and that light shines brightest when you're whole. So as you breathe into this part of your journey, give yourself permission to release the weight of being the one who always makes it better. Let others learn to sit in their discomfort. Let them grow from it. That's not cruelty, it's sacred space. And in doing so, you reclaim the energy you've given away for far too long. This isn't selfish. This is sacred responsibility to yourself, to your body, and to the life waiting for you beyond the noise. What's meant to come into the light always finds its way, and Libra, you are living proof that some truths don't need defending, they simply need time. After everything you've carried, after the patience you've practiced, after the silence you've kept, the moment has arrived where clarity no longer needs to be demanded. It just appears. You don't need to speak to be heard now, because your very energy has been speaking volumes all along. In this phase of your journey, you are not being asked to do anything. You are simply being witnessed. And that is enough. There are moments in life when we think we must prove we were right, that our pain was valid, that we were not the ones to blame. But life, and especially the kind of cosmic timing that governs Libra's life path, is rarely that simple. What you are experiencing now isn't vindication through revenge. It's revelation through alignment. There is a kind of justice that doesn't scream, doesn't knock loudly, but instead, arrives like a sudden wind sweeping away the illusions, the manipulation, the distorted narratives others once created about you. This is that moment. The energy around you is beginning to shift because the energy within you no longer clings to proving yourself. And that's when the truth becomes impossible to ignore. In tarot, this energy is so vividly echoed in the cards that speak without compromise. Judgment reminds us that we are always seen, even when we feel invisible. The Tower shows that structures built on falsehood must crumble. An Ace of Swords cuts through the fog with unapologetic truth. Together, these symbols reflect what you've likely felt in your body and soul, that someone who wronged you is being asked to face what they once ran from. And yet, your role isn't to watch them fall. Your role is to rise. Astrologically, this is the quiet work of Pluto, the planet that unearths, that reveals, that makes it impossible to hide anymore. And as this energy unfolds, you may notice subtle things: conversations shifting, truths surfacing, eyes avoiding yours, not because you are feared, but because you are now seen in a light that exposes what others tried to conceal. And this is the beauty of it, Libra. You didn't force this to happen. You didn't control the timing. You simply stayed true to your essence, graceful, honest, and unwavering. And the universe took notice. There's a deeper lesson here, too. You were never alone in that silence. Even when no one stood up for you, even when your voice was dismissed, something far wiser was always present. It's in those quiet moments where you felt abandoned or betrayed that your inner light was growing stronger. And now, that light is doing what words never could. It's drawing the line between you and those who once used your kindness for convenience. They may not say it aloud, but they know. The energy has shifted. The access they once had is gone, and the person who stood quietly in the background now holds a presence that cannot be ignored. Somewhere deep in sacred wisdom, there's a gentle reminder that you don't have to chase recognition to receive it. When you walk in truth long enough, it finds you. And when it does, it doesn't come with fanfare, it comes with peace. A peace that wraps around you and whispers, you were never wrong for trusting yourself. You were never foolish for loving purely. And you were never weak for walking away. Let that peace land. You've spent so much time questioning if your quiet strength was enough. Now, the universe answers that question for you, not in words, but in actions, in closures, in new beginnings that only appear once the old illusions collapse. You've waited long enough. What's surfacing now is not judgment in the harsh sense, it's a rebalancing. A correction. And it's happening not because you forced it, but because you embodied it. There's a quiet power in finally realizing you no longer have to be the one who keeps everything from falling apart. For so long, Libra, you've played the role of the peacekeeper, the mediator, the silent strength between chaos and calm. You've absorbed tension, softened your truth, and sacrificed small pieces of yourself to maintain balance, not because you were weak, but because you believed in harmony. But there's a difference between harmony and obligation, and this part of your journey asks you to release the weight of managing everyone else's balance so you can finally return to your own. What's unfolding now isn't a rebellion, it's a return. A return to the center of your own life, your own needs, your own voice. You were never meant to carry someone else's emotional responsibilities. And just because you have the ability to hold space doesn't mean you have to stretch yourself thin to do so. Being the balancer doesn't mean being depleted. True balance is mutual. It requires both sides to show up equally, and when they don't, it's not your job to keep compensating. There's something healing in learning how to say no without guilt, especially when it comes to how you give your time, your energy, and your resources. In finances, this could mean creating clear boundaries around what you offer and when. You are generous by nature, Libra, but generosity should never come at the expense of your stability. You don't need to buy affection, earn love with giving, or prove your worth through sacrifice. Love that's real won't ask you to trade your comfort for its presence. And people who truly value you will never make you feel like you need to give more just to stay connected. The same truth applies in relationships. Saying yes all the time doesn't make you more lovable, it often just makes you more exhausted. You deserve a love that wants your authenticity, not your compliance. Someone who loves you because of your no, just as much as your yes. Someone who listens when you speak honestly, even when your words are uncomfortable. The right kind of love is not impressed by how well you accommodate, it is grounded in how freely you can be yourself without fear of rejection. And in your professional life, it's no longer sustainable to trade your personal values for a seat at the table. If your work environment constantly asks you to shrink, to bend, to nod quietly while your needs are ignored, that's not a career, it's a contract in self-erasure. You don't have to hustle to be heard. Your presence alone is valuable. The skills you bring, the insight you offer, the way you care, all of it matters. If the spaces you're in don't recognize that, then you're not being too much. There's simply not enough for who you've become. What makes this part of your journey so profound is that it's no longer about proving anything. You don't need to justify your choices or explain your boundaries to people who were never listening to begin with. You're not asking for permission to be wholly, reclaiming it. And maybe that's what it means, at the deepest level, to embody the energy of Libra. You don't just carry the scales, you are the scales. You know what's fair because you've lived through what wasn't. You know what's balanced because you've spent years restoring what others disrupted. In the quiet teachings passed down over time, there's a simple truth: peace begins when we stop placing it in the hands of others and learn how to cultivate it within. You are not the one responsible for holding it all together anymore. You are free to hold yourself now, and that is more than enough. You don't need to prove anything anymore, Libra. Not to them. Not to the ones who never listened. Not even to yourself. Because your presence, the quiet grace you've carried, the inner truth you've protected, the peace you've chosen over pride is the answer. The justice that once trembled in silence has now found its voice through you. And even if you didn't say a word, your light has spoken in ways words never could. You see, for too long, you stood at the edge of the room, giving others space to speak their version of truth. You let the world lean on your empathy, expecting you to bend, to buffer, to balance everything even when it hurt. But Libra, your silence was never weakness. It was a sacred strategy. It was the deep wisdom of your soul choosing to listen before it spoke. And now, the time has come for that silence to end, not with shouting, not with revenge, but with revelation. With clarity. With the quiet power of someone who no longer needs to explain themselves, because their light already says everything that needs to be said. What would happen, I wonder, if today you finally chose yourself not as a compromise, not as a last resort, but as the first and most important choice of your life? What if you stopped trying to restore balance for others who refuse to carry their own weight, and instead poured all that energy back into your own becoming? What if your healing didn't need permission? Would you trust that the universe has already said yes to your becoming? Libra, this message may have stirred something deep inside you. Perhaps it brought up old memories, the kind that never found closure. Or maybe it sparked a new fire, a recognition that you are no longer the one waiting to be seen. You are the vision. You are the mirror. You are the shift the universe has been waiting to anchor through balance, through truth, and through grace. If this message resonates with you, if it touched something sacred within your story, I invite you to affirm it now in the comments. Write it boldly, like a declaration from your soul. I am the light of justice. I do not need apologies. I choose myself. Let that be your mantra today. Let it ripple into the energy around you, drawing in only those who are ready to meet you in your full truth. And if someone came to mind as you listened, someone who needs this reminder, share this video with them. Remind them that silence doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes, it's the armor of a soul protecting its deepest truth, waiting for the right moment to rise. Before you go, let me take a moment to say thank you from the softest corners of my heart. Every time you like, comment, or subscribe, you become part of this sacred circle we're building here at Zodiac Whisper Tarot. Your presence isn't just seen, it's felt. It's powerful. It's why I do what I do. And trust me, my beloved Libra, you'll want to stay with me until the very last minute of this channel's journey, because what the universe is preparing next is breathtaking. So, tell me in the comments, what was it, truly, that pulled you here today? Was it a whisper in your chest? A weight you couldn't name? Or maybe it was the quiet voice of your soul, finally being ready to be heard. Remember, Libra, justice has spoken. And this time you don't need to say a word to be understood.